Well, here we are, my lovely listeners. An Empire of Ice and Fire by Longclaw 1-6. Epilogue, Part 2. Dawn. In early morning mist had blown in from the Bay of Dragons, shrouding Marine in a rather picturesque image. Daenerys wished she could have had some sort of means to take a snapshot of the urban landscape before her. High above the mists and the vagaries of the sprawling metropolis below, she stared upon the new Valyrian capital city, where the initial high of her young reign had faded in the midst of fire and blood. She wanted to remember it as this, not the sight of butchered bodies and rioting harpies in the street. She heard a clink on the lip of the balcony beside her.
"You're thinking far too hard for this early in the morning,"
Jon chuckled, face crinkling with that smile of his. Daenerys would do anything to just have him smile like that more. Nevertheless, she raised her eyebrows. This coming from the king of brooding? They held a serious look before both of them giggled. Just thinking about how far this city has come, she said, picking up the goblet of non-alcoholic fruit juice. Sipping out the sweet brew, Dany found she didn't really miss ale or wine. Jon sipped on his own concoction, non-alcoholic in solidarity with his beloved. Their late great-uncle had written long before about his concern that alcohol increased the chances of feeble-mindedness in babes from simple observations of wildling mothers. Their drinks were strong, but in a far different way, and both had decided to heed his advice.
"I remember being here during the height of the Harpy rebellions. So much death. But also hope. The Citizens' Council was working together, and the Guild of Artists were producing new masterpieces."
King's Landing will be well served by your decision. Even in the midst of war and chaos, Jon still had the foresightedness to prepare a group of artists and artisans to travel to Westeros and ply their skills to rebuild after centuries of stagnation. He won't simply be known as a great warrior. He is good at fighting, but hates what he's good at. Jon was good at being a benevolent ruler in the vein of Daeron II the Good, and Daenerys was sure his feelings would be far different in that regard.
"My father wanted to take a city of brick and shit and leave it of marble and gold."
He closed his eyes, trying to temper his emotion at thinking of Rhaegar.
"I can think of nothing more important I can do than delivering his legacy. Not just for King's Landing."
He reached over and hugged her from behind, hands resting atop the swell of her stomach. The babe began to kick against his father's hand. Daenerys' lips widened in a huge smile. Marine is prospering under the new order of things. New investment from the 12 arriving. With the devastation in Westeros from years of war, many second or third sons of intact noble houses saw the new empire as an opportunity. 10 men and 2 women of high-born blood, half ironically being bastard birth, assembled the funds and journeyed to New Valyria, ready to fill the economic hole and boundless new ventures in the end of slavery brought. Both monarchs had met with them the night before, convinced of how their plans would help the New Valyria.
Jon nodded. "The world is shrinking."
He set down his empty goblet and pressed his lips against the back of her neck.
"But it's too early to worry."
His hands rested to cup her full breasts. Dany purred. "And what do you think you are doing, Your Grace?" Anyway, moving on. Line break.
"To the Emperor and Empress!" Tyrion was already drunk, words slurred and swaying as he stood atop the long table, goblet thrust in the air. "May they rule 100 years, and their babes thousands of years after!"
Blech! Toast cut off by a rather loud belch that drew a louder applause and cheering than all the other toasts. Mugs and glasses clinking as the lords and ladies tossed their drinks back. Alcohol disappearing down their gullets. Minstrels picked up another jaunty tune. Servants brought another course of food as the feast got going again. Smirking, Daenerys leaned into her good sister on the left. "It's times like these that I am glad that Jon made you hand." "Well," Sansa laughed, "Tyrion does his best thinking drunk. At least I'm sure it's thinking and not just blank gazing." Both women were convinced that it was a question unable to be answered. To the left, John watched the twins gushing over their cousin. "You'll be swinging warhammers in no time, little stag," Rhaegar proclaimed, pinching Sandor Baratheon's chubby cheek.
"Easy, son. Let him enjoy his crawling years,"
John snickered, sipping at his ale. He ought to act as a southerner now, being a dragon, but the wolf in him couldn't ever get used to the sickly sweet tartness of wine.
"Perhaps this crowd."
He stared directly at Mance Giantsbane, punching a rather rowdy Lord Greycall when he got a little too bawdy right in front of him. Off to the side, he was sure he spotted Tyene Martell and Bronn enjoying the affections of a servant girl.
"Isn't right for a babe."
"Kappa!" both the twins whined, giving him the same pout that their mother had when she wanted to cheekily get her way. Arya nearly fell out of her chair, laughing. "Lighten up, King Broody. My niece and nephew have been in battle, and this little stag here is going to be a tough warrior like his mama and papa. Isn't that right?" Sandor waved his arms around excitedly. John recognized the gesture as one Arya used to make when she was little.
"Definitely her son."
"John." He turned to see Daenerys motioning to the exit, rubbing her belly. He nodded, standing. Well, there was little that could still the festivities celebrating the 4th anniversary of their coronation, held at Storm's End as a goodwill gesture by Gendry and Arya Baratheon. His movements were one of them.
"Well, lords and ladies, your presence has been an honour, and feel free to continue celebrating. But Her Grace and I must make our exit."
Cheers of "Lightbringer" and "Dragon Queen" roaring behind them. The Emperor took his Empress's hand and made their exit. As soon as the door was closed, John attempted to kiss Dany, but she pushed him away. "Save that, my wolf," she smirked. "But first, I have a little present for you, to commemorate our coronation day." While the eager smile on Dany's face was infectious, John couldn't help but look away, modest to the core.
"Dany, you didn't have to."
She responded by grabbing his chin with her hand, forcing their lips together in a bruising kiss, using her passion to show John just how much he meant to her. Their tongues battled, Emperor stronger, but Empress far more determined and zealous, overpowering John and plundering his mouth. "John! When would he know he's worth the whole fucking world?"
"I don't need a gift, Dany."
A hand covering her heart, the message clear.
"Having you is the greatest gift."
Swooning with love for him, Dany clasped his hands. "You spoil all of us, my love. Let me spoil you this time." Gently she brought his hands to her stomach. "Let us show you just how much we love you." How could he say no to that?
"I love you,"
he murmured, tears in his eyes. She kissed away the tears. "We love you too." At that moment their bake kicked against their hands, as if concurring with his mother. Both of them laughed happily. "Wait here, my dragon wolf." Daenerys started away, tapping his feet on the stone, unable to stop the nervous drumming of his fingers against the wood panelling adorning the walls. The fact that the Baratheons liked the huntsman cabins motif not surprising him in the slightest. John waited out the ticking seconds before Dany was back, grinning like a madwoman while hauling in something covered by a tarp.
"What do you have there, my love?"
he asked with a raised eyebrow. "Close your eyes." She grinned.
"Daenerys, really?"
Her grin widened as she giggled at his put-out expression. "Please, John," she urged, bubbling with excitement. This was a side of her that he adored, seeing her so joyous, without a care in the world. Giving in, he closed his eyes, waiting for Dany's signal. A flutter of a tarp being pulled off and a delighted giggle.
"Can I?"
"Open them, John." Complying, he first found Dany's face, teeth bared in a dazzling smile. Following the line of vision of her twinkling eyes, John fell upon the item beside her, and his heart stopped. Jaw dropping and eyes widening. Slowly he stepped out of his seat upon their bed, walking over.
"But how?"
It appears that the Cave of Dragonglass isn't the only mystery on Dragonstone needing to be discovered. Resting under her arm was a painting, intricate in its detail. one of his parents. Lyanna sat on a chair, clad in a sky blue dress with dainty hands clasping on her lap. Stark direwolf etched into the dress, even as a three-headed dragon pin kept back her dark crimson cloak, tied around her neck. Behind, armour wrapped around her shoulders, was his father, Rhaegar, resplendent in Valyrian-style armour, black tunic, and identical red cloak. Dragon a bright red on his chest, silver hair flowing around his shoulders, as Lyanna's chestnut was on hers. They must have had this commissioned before even the rebellion started. Tears were welling in Jon's eyes. It wasn't just how perfect the painting was.
The painter. He painted them exactly as they were.
Thumb ghosting over the images. They were perfect likenesses. Daenerys walked to his side and embraced him. Tyrion found it, exploring the cellars of Dragonstone. There was also a painting of my mother. Seeing it the day before had brought her to tears as well. Now all of us will know what they looked like. Forever. Jon turned to stare into her eyes, a look of wonder in his.
Thank you.
A tight embrace followed. The Emperor and Empress were just holding each other tightly.
I got you a gift as well,
he murmured after a long time. She pulled back, intrigued. You did? What is it, my love? He managed to smirk.
You'll find out when we get back to King's Landing.
Line break. Steel clashed on steel, the echoes ringing out through the inner training grounds of Storm's End. Bodies danced upon the stone, arms and blades flashing through the air.
Giving up?
The Emperor teased, Longclaw flat against his arm to bat away a particularly firm thrust. Arya managed to spin on her feet to catch Jon's twirling blade, reforming into a strike. Needle, now a Valyrian steel-forged masterpiece as a name-day gift from Gendry, was made for thrusting, but its strong blade could parry as well as any Westerosi masterpiece. I can do this all day, brother. He chuckled.
That's my line.
The wolves charged at each other once again. Among the many onlookers, 3 women watched from atop. Arya has certainly recovered from her childbirth. Sansa has just come back from playing with her newest nephew. Little Sandor Baratheon had the same dark hair and blue eyes as his father. Certainly proof of her sister's love and fidelity. Stark genes are as good as Targaryen ones, Daenerys remarked, eyes only on Jon. I recovered quickly from each of mine. And will for this one. She rubbed her belly lovingly. The Emperor has not slackened, Missandei mused. Dany's eyes blazed hungrily. No, he has not. Even bloated like a cow, tired and aching, the sight of her husband locked in the middle of battle never ceased to arouse her. To awaken the dragon, though in a far more pleasurable, enjoyable way than Viserys could ever have meant. This is probably one of the most enjoyable parts of my day. Oh! A look of discomfort formed on Dany's face as she reached down, cupping her stomach. Sansa furrowed her brows, worried.
Daenerys?
The Empress shook her head. 'Tis nothing. Just the baby. He's been restless all day. Dragon and wolf. Tenacious combination, Missandei noted with a small smirk. Pretty soon he will be sneaking off to ride Rhaenyra one of these days. Don't, Daenerys warned with a glare. I don't want to worry any more than I currently am. 2 wild dragon wolves is enough for me at this point. A laugh left Sansa. At least there won't be any undead armies for Sierra or the new babe to fight. Watching Arya leap back nimbly, dodging a furious swipe from Jon, before catching the Emperor's second strike with a skillful parry, she sighed and patted her stomach. Nor this one. Her good sister stared for a moment, before beaming and hugging her close. How far along? A little over 1 moon turn, the Hound murmured. Haven't even told Pod yet. Why not? A frown, sad and worried. Fearful, I think. Her trauma. Her pain. In a way, Sansa still hadn't gotten over it. Constantly struggling with the ghost of her tormentors. Fighting back the urge to adopt their bitter hate and ruthless manipulation for a war against them. How could she be a good mother? Seeming as if to understand the impulse, Danny pressed a sisterly hand on hers. You'll never be ready till they're born. And even then, the babe kicked again, doing its best to try and hammer his way out of her womb. They're worth it, believe me. Just like that, a smile was coaxed from Sansa's lips. Twirling, lighter on his feet than one would expect, the Emperor met his sister blow for blow, handling Longclaw, the famed blade that brought the dawn, as effortlessly as if it were the weight of needle. Arya didn't give ground easily, fighting with the ferocity of a cornered wolf, never ceasing her thrusts for Jon's centre mass, forcing him on the defensive. Onlookers were entranced by the display, unable to even cheer for their favourites, for want of missing a decisive blow. A blow thought to come as Arya ducked from a swing, sidestepping quickly to jam needle into Jon's armpit, only to feel a whiff of cold steel resting at her neck. The Emperor having spun his blade and counterattacked. Soon there was no sound but their heavy breathing.
Draw!
Jon panted. Arya, both irritated and impressed, nodded breathlessly. Draw! Arms falling, tensions released, both sheathed their swords. Slowly, a teasing smirk formed on her lips. Still can't beat me, Your Grace. Arya bowed in a sarcastic manner.
Jon laughed, crossing his arms. And you finally found someone who you can't beat. Well, a second person.
He cocked his head in a mirthful understanding. Flipping him off, Arya's grey eyes narrowed. Supernatural ice demons don't count, and you know it, stupid. The Lady of Storm's End only called stupid those she loved most, so it was high praise. I don't know, Lady Arya, Daenerys teased. I believe it does count. While Jon and Sansa erupted into chuckles, Arya was not amused. When my nephew is out of you, we're having a match. She jabbed her finger in the Empress's direction for effect. Just us girls. Dany was not one to shy away from a challenge. You're on! Oh! Suddenly she doubled over, clutching her belly. Your Grace! Missandei was at her side. Daenerys! Sansa knelt for a split second later.
Dany!
Jon literally leapt towards the balcony, climbing the rest of the way to get to his wife. With a puddle of wetness underneath the heavily pregnant Empress, it was rather obvious what was happening.
Fetch the Maester! He roared like the dragon he was. Dany!
He stroked her hair.
Hold on, my love.
She smiled wanly. At least, there are no assassins this time. Her weak laugh was drowned out as the contractions ripped through her. Line break. Horses neighing beneath him, Helt tilting down and pulling on the reins. Jon pulled back.
Easy, boy. Easy.
Ironically, it was far easier riding Rhaegal. Less ornery. Well, at least their magical connection made it easier to communicate through any problems. The horse below was a purebred Craighall stallion, but even it would be a bit startled by the crowd all around the Imperial procession. Tens of thousands of people lining the avenues of King's Landing, faces filled with a joyous rapture as they screamed their love of House Targaryen and the Imperial couple themselves. The glimpse of Jon, atop his stallion, in full Valyrian plate armour, trailed by 2 flag-bearers and 2 Emperor's Guard, Lord Commander Sandor Clegane and Ser Jacaerys Velaryon. It only made the crowd more wild, chanting his name. Lightbringer! Lightbringer!
Lightbringer!
Where's the Dragon Empress? Screamed a random man in the throng of people. A new cry picked up from the crowd. Dragon Empress! Dragon Empress! Dragon Empress! No monarchs had been so loved since Jaehaerys I and Alysanne. And now Jaehaerys III and Daenerys earned the same adoration of the people of the Targaryen Empire. From the true north to New Valyria. Wheelhouses, wagons and troops of the newly formed Imperial Household Guard, including the Unsullied Corps, now accepting the new recruitments in far less brutal training regime, passed through the gatehouse of the newly rebuilt wall around the Red Keep. Joffrey-era additions demolished during the time of the Imperial progresses. Waving once more to the crowd, Jon urged his mount into the outer courtyard of the keep, dismounting right beside the wheelhouse, Longclaw clattering against his armoured shin plates. He passed Ser Jorah and Ser Dickon to arrive before the door, opening it himself.
After you, my dragon.
Letting Jon's hands rest on the small of her back, Daenerys exited the wheelhouse, dressed in a flowing white gown of the more modest Essosi style. Bundled in her arms was the tiny form of Prince Benjen Targaryen, their newborn son. She glanced up at her husband with a dazzling smile. Your son missed you. Jon brushed his thumb on the babe's soft cheek.
I missed him too.
Eyes shifting to Dany.
His mother too.
Smile widening, the Empress fell into place beside the Emperor. Shall we?
After you.
Guards and servants trailing, they made their way towards Maegor's holdfast. Trail of servants behind them carrying their baggage through the hallways of the imperial quarters. Daenerys glanced at the Emperor. All right, Jon. You have your coronation gift. Yet I am yet to receive mine. His serene smile at his wife, carrying their newborn son, only widened, grey eyes sparkling. She recognized that look. A mix of delight at spoiling the beautiful mother of his children, and pinning his Empress down on the bed. It both made warmth course through her system.
Patience, my dragon,
Jon eventually said, leaning in to kiss the crown of her head, and pinching his son's cheek. Bouncing Benjen in her hands, their perfect Valyrian prince giggling and waving his hands, she kissed his cheek before looking at her husband with a put-out expression. Do not keep your Empress waiting.
Almost there, Dany.
Turning the corner of the newly vaulted hallway, a gentle hand against her back stilled her.
Take a look.
Dany blinked. It's just the doors to our chambers, Jon.
Look closer.
His grin was almost boyish, bouncing on the balls of his feet, while the servants began to brush past them, at the very least bowing their heads depending on the amount of baggage they carried. Behind them, Ser Jorah and Ser Jacaerys stopped, leaning against the walls while keeping a watchful eye. Brows furrowing, Daenerys simply scrutinized the various servants as they approached the imported ironwood from the resumed trade with the recovering north, pushing open the red doors. Suddenly she gasped, eyes widening as she pieced it together. Gingerly handing Benjen to Irri, her handmaiden and the designated wet nurse for each of their babes, Daenerys turned to Jon, with a gaping jaw and trembling hands. Red door! Jon's grin widened, hand wrapping around Dany's waist and pulling them to the side.
On the boat, you told me about your childhood. The days when Viserys was a kind brother, growing up under the watch of Sir William Derry and Braavos.
At his urging, they walked towards the doors, Dany's eyes unable to leave the red-painted wood.
The house with the red door.
Yes, she murmured, still in disbelief. Their desperate moments together aboard ship, curled into each other skin to skin, furs pulled tightly over their bodies, as the winds from the shivering sea crashed against the hull. They shared many stories, in between bouts of frantic lovemaking, desperate to know each other in the little amount of time they had. Now a lifetime. He remembered. He really remembered. Daenerys shouldn't have been shocked, but she was. Each time she said she couldn't have a more perfect husband, he did something like this.
You always wanted to go home, Dany. To have a place to call home.
He guided her into the imperial chambers.
Welcome home, Nahar Joligon.
Even the first glimpse caused her to gasp in return. The quarters were completely revamped. Classic red tiling, iconic since the days of Maegor, removed, adding in high vaulted ceilings with intricate floral and sky patterns frescoed into the plaster. Walls and columns were arranged in a Valyrian architecture style, though of a light cream and red rather than the blacks and greys customary in Dragonstone. Unlike the throne room, which sported the glorious murals, mosaics and paintings of the glorious campaigns of the Targaryen kings and queens of old, this was far more intimate. Paintings of the family, mosaics of Dragonstone and Winterfell and King's Landing. Daenerys walked around the massive chambers, stepping atop the Myrish rugs, northern wood panelling, and polished tiled floors. The quarters were arranged in a sort of horseshoe pattern, anchored by a large hearth, bearskin rug lining the front. Dany suddenly filled with images anyway, and dozens of chairs and plush love seats. On either side were doors to private studies for each of them, and down twin colonnaded hallways lining the atrium led to a half-dozen bedchambers. A grand one for themselves, 2 nurseries for Sierra and Benjamin, 1 each for Arya and Rhaegar, and a bare one for as of yet unknown future babes that Daenerys was determined to make for Jon.
Well, it was our ancestor Aegon the Unlikely that last renovated the keep,
Jon explained, trailing several feet behind her.
The quarters smelled far too much of Fat Robert or the Vicious Idiot for my liking. Tyrion handled most of it, though the design was my idea, especially the atrium.
Large wooden shutters folded in, waiting for the harsh winter winds that they could protect against. Gauzy curtains took their place, blowing inwards from the sea breeze wafting in from Blackwater Bay. Daenerys parted the curtains to find a delicate atrium. 2 pools leading from small artificial waterfalls, designed as the ones for the Dornish water gardens. Spouts shaped in a mix of dragons and wolves. But what drew Dany's gaze was the tree in the centre, affixed firmly by dirt and soil, lugged up there, leaves poking through the open-air top into the sky itself. No ordinary tree. Seeing the bulbous lemons growing on the tree, Dany turned to look at Jon with a quivering lip, eyes sparkling. "Jon!" This time his smile was sheepish, faint blush on his cheeks.
You said you loved playing under the lemon tree. That the last day before you had to flee was a day spent picking lemons from the tree. There was one growing in the gardens of the Red Keep, so it was just a matter of bringing it up here.
Just below the tree, leaves vibrant and green with life, Daenerys' hands trembled as she reached up, fingers caressing one of the fat, yellow spheres. With a simple tug, she snapped the lemon from the stem. Dany brought it to her nose, sniffing the sour fruit. Memories flooded her mind, of a happy childhood in Braavos. Idyllic. Just her, a carefree and loving Viserys, and their attentive caregiver, Sir Willem Derry. A childhood free of pain and starvation, all fear of assassins finding and slitting their throat. Of Viserys going off into rages and abusing her. Holding that lemon underneath the tree. It seemed as if Daenerys was transported back into the house with the red door. Hearing the bated breathing behind her, Daenerys slowly turned, finding the comely northern features and grey eyes she adored. It's not the house with the red door. This could never truly recreate it. What this was, it was something better. A new home, new refuge with her beloved husband, children and family. As if punctuating it, the roar of the dragons boomed above the keep, Arya and Rhaegar urging Edoron and Sansinia respectively in an intense dance above the city. The home before her wasn't an idyllic hiding spot from the demons of the world, but rather a safe refuge of love and happiness she had so longed for. And Jon gave it to me. Feet shifting, Jon watched as Daenerys stared at him, violet eyes deep pools as her mouth opened in pure disbelief. White dress brushing against the fine car-holed travertine floor, while she slowly walked towards him, regarding him as if seeing him all over again. Jon could normally read his beloved like a book, but the long silence started to make him nervous.
Dany?
He rubbed the back of his neck, worried.
You don't like it?
Only an arm's length away from him, his words cracked her contemplation.
You beautiful, beautiful man!
Without warning, Daenerys reached out, looping her arms around Jon's neck and drew him in for a deep kiss. Gods, she loved him. Thinking of this, of giving her the house with the red door? You're perfect, she mumbled against his lips, attacking his tongue with hers, hands frantically touching all over him. My perfect dragon wolf.
I love you, Dany.
His touches were also frenzied. She had leaned in to peg her lips when an idea came to her mind. Wait here. Slightly put out at the delayed gratification, Jon nevertheless was curious as to his wife's idea. Crossing his arms and leaning against one of the columns. watching as she stepped towards their solar.
Don't take too long, love.
Daenerys made sure to add an extra sachet in her walk for Jon's pleasure. Only ever him. A smile spread on her face at seeing her present to him. The servants, all of whom worshipped the ground she and Jon walked on, had placed the painting of Rhaegar and Lyanna leaning against the plush chair in the solar quite gingerly, not wishing to damage it. Dany picked it up, walking towards the elaborate marble hearth where she already imagined spending chilly nights cuddled up with her beloved husband. I think the painting should go right here. Moving to place it above the hearth, Jon was by her side quickly, helping her. His mother and father, the pact of ice and fire finally consummated. Looking at them, assuming the commanding panel of the room. Tears began to fall from Jon's eyes, the Empress helping to keep them back. The Emperor helpless to keep them back. Hey! A gentle hand cupped his cheek. Don't cry, my love. Dany melted her soft body into his chest.
They look like a powerful king and queen, Daddy,
he croaked out.
It doesn't show how loving they were, how they loved.
She understood. They loved you, Jon. I know they are proud of the man you've become. A loving smile. The husband and father you've become.
How do I truly know that? That I'm good. That I know what is good and just and right in the world.
Right now, after all that had happened, the fits of melancholy of the bastard of Winterfell he had once been, nothing but Jon Snow would return, telling him none of it mattered, that he would always be a stain on society, a useless mistake. Drawing him down, Daenerys let him bury his face into her neck. But you do. You do. He leaned back, Dany immediately cupping his stubbly cheek. You've always known, Jon. If it took 1,000 lifetimes, she would make him learn just how amazing he was. We are going to do it, Jon. Build a better world. We've already done so much. You've already done so much. He smiled weakly.
You always think so well of me.
Because you are Jon the Greatest, Jaehaerys the Lightbringer, the man I love. Kissing him again, Daenerys sighed happily as he reciprocated. Come with me, please.
Of course.
Following her, his beloved dragon, the woman he had known from the beginning to be the only woman he would ever truly want, Jon was guided onto the balcony. Stretching out from the lemon tree's atrium, towards the northern side of Maegor's holdfast, high enough to be protected by the first line of battlements 10 feet below. Sun descending over the man-made mountain to the west, it cast a breathtaking shadow over King's Landing. Only just now rising from the ashes Joffrey had plunged it into. The great city Aegon the Conqueror and his sister wives built centuries ago, lay nearest swooping in from the sparkling waters of Blackwater Bay towards the newly rehabilitated dragon pit, open-aired and fully accessible to a dragon to being able to fly free.
A dragon is not a slave, never meant to be chained.
Smiling wide as Edaron and Sensenya, twins still atop them, moved in to land in the pit as well, Daenerys felt Jon's arms wrap around her waist.
I am sorry, love. I know you hate my brooding.
I happen to love your brooding. You look so handsome. I just wish you knew how wonderful you are.
He sighed. If you fell in love with me, then either I did something right, or you suffer from our family's madness.
No madness. Just enchantment. She turned in his arms, their last night in Winterfell coming back to her mind. The words she had come from her lips. Remember this, Jaehaerys Targaryen? Much was the same, but so much was different as well. For the better. Their children, their home, loving siblings and friends, and Jon, finally knowing who he was and where he belonged, Remember this. Remember our love. Staring into her violet eyes, John understood.
I will. Always, my love.
Just as he leaned in to capture her lips, a bark echoed from the atrium as Ghost bounded to them, tongue lolling out, clearly seeking affection.
John laughed. Hey, boy.
He scratched the direwolf's head, only for John to cock his head to the side and peer at Danny. The Emperor rolled his eyes.
Traitor.
He's not a traitor, John. Danny giggled. Just wants his Muna. Isn't that right, little wolf? Pouncing with her hands, Ghost practically transformed into the little puppy he was when first meeting Danny, rolling onto his back and letting the Targaryen Empress tickle his belly. Smile on his face, shifting from Danny to Ghost to back to Danny. John shifted back to the sunset. Following his brother, Rhaegal landed atop the lip of the dragon pit, his head turned towards the Red Keep. A large distance between Visenya's hill and Aegon's high hill, but John could see the amber eyes shimmer all the same.
Don't be gloomy, Kappa.
His mount's thoughts were as loud as if he were right beside him.
You're home.
A hoot resonated through the city, and then Rhaegal followed his brother into the pit.
Home.
Placing a hand on Daenerys' shoulder, the Empress turned around from the overjoyed Ghost. Eyebrow raising quizzically, his wife concerned. John offered a reassuring smile.
I'm home, Daenerys. We're both home.
The end. Hi guys! Hope you enjoyed that. Oh my god. It's finally here. The end of the Empire of Ice and Fire. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this. This is my longest fan fiction as of this recording by dozens of chapters. Oh, that was beautiful. The house with the red door. Little Benjen Targaryen. King. Prince Ben. Yes. Oh, and Sansa's pregnant as well. Oh, little Sandor Baratheon. Oh, well, I bet the Hound got a kick out of that one. Oh, I loved every minute of that. So beautiful. Anyway, thank you guys again. This means the world to me. Remember to like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you are in. Take care, my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Bye!